4th edition Dungeon Master's Guide is a treasure trove of useful stuff, unlike the 2014 DMG, which is largely a waste of money. I'm on record saying that Sly Flourish's Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master is a better guide for running games than the 5e DMG. And to the point, the treasure in the 4th edition DMG is so trophy that, for the first time on this channel, I'm diving back into the same well for 5 more rules to steal from 4e. There's some good stuff in here, so let's not waste any more time and splash right into those waters. First up, let's talk about monster readiness, or what are your monsters doing when they're not fighting adventurers? Before the PCs encounter a group of monsters, those potential enemies can be asleep, distracted, ready, or alert. And this state can go a long way to helping you determine if either side is able to get surprise on the other. When it comes to the state of being asleep, the time of day is important here. Not all creatures sleep at night, but a lot of them do, especially humanoids. So if your party is entering a location in the middle of the night and also being sneaky, then it's fair to assume that a good number of the creatures will be asleep. If any are not asleep, think about why they're not. Next is the state of distracted. To me, this is the most common state one would find a creature, because people and animals tend to fill up their time with activities. Labor, entertainment, socializing. The goblins in the cave don't just spend all day sitting around waiting for invading adventurers to give them something to do. They're cooking, cleaning, sharpening their weapons and fixing their armor, catching up on gossip, playing games of chance. Nothing helps sell an enemy lair as a living, breathing place more than giving its denizens tasks. Next is the ready state, which the 4th edition DMG says is the default state for most monsters. I think that would actually depend on what the monster's job or role is. Sure, the goblins tasked with guarding the cave entrance are going to be in that state, but is the goblin cook going to be constantly ready for danger? Probably not. The cook is likely to be distracted for most of the day. And finally, the alert state means weapons up, clear eyes, full hearts, expecting trouble to come walking around the corner. If your paladin in full plate rolled terribly on their stealth check, then this becomes the active state for most of the creatures within earshot inside the enemy lair. Now, it would be easy to get buried in the minutia trying to figure out and assign monster readiness state for every single creature every moment of the day. Don't. I tend to think of readiness per room in a dungeon, as in, the monsters in the barracks are often playing a dice game and therefore distracted. The monsters in the treasure room are ready because it's their job to protect the treasure. Write these words as tags in the margins of your dungeon map if it helps you to remember. Next on the list is DM style. This is a simple rule, more like an observation really. Check out this table in the book. This supposes that you fall on one side or the other of a series of spectrums, and there's definitely no single correct way to run games. For example, I tend to fall into the categories of cinematic, anachronistic, intense, and silly. My games are much closer to The Princess Bride than Lord of the Rings in terms of the tone. If you're a new Dungeon Master, it's easy to look at this list and think, I'm definitely going to run games with a bold and heroic style. And you can attempt to achieve that, but your style will largely be defined by how you react in the moment to what your players do. Your actual style may not match your ideal style when the game clock is ticking. That's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. I think this list has one valuable use, and that is if you find yourself drifting too far into any one particular style or set of styles. If you look over your session notes from the last game and realize that you went uber hard on gritty, intense, and serious, think about how you can inject a little more lightheartedness or heroic feeling into the next one. Even dramatic stories can benefit from a touch of comic relief from time to time. And chronically silly tales still need those moments of conflict and tension to create stakes so it doesn't become meaningless. You know your table and you know the kind of game they like, but mix things up from time to time. Your players will appreciate your attempts to keep the game from becoming stagnant and monotone. Next on our list is what to do when an encounter is too hard. This may seem obvious in many circumstances, but I like how the book spells out specific things to do. It says to give the players an escape route, make bad choices for the monsters, invent reasons for the monsters to flee, or have the monsters elect to not kill the party. I'm going to advise not relying on the escape route because I know from experience that you can never expect the party to flee. It's a bad idea to ever assume the PCs will cut and run. I mean, You can flat out tell them, hey, this encounter is way above your level, and they may still stay and fight. I've seen it happen. When it comes to making quote-unquote bad choices for monsters, I think you don't always have to have your enemies make the most optimal choices in encounters. Quite often in combat, your enemies will use their most powerful ability in round 1 because they may not live to see round 2. But just because it says the monster gets 3 attacks doesn't mean you always have to use all 3. And this segues nicely into the next piece of advice about giving enemies reasons to flee. I think it's helpful here to consider the monster's intelligence and wisdom scores, and also their goals. Most creatures don't want to die. Therefore, very few creatures will fight to the death unless they don't have another choice. Usually, I will have the last remaining baddie try to run away, especially if this gives one or more PCs opportunity attacks. Players love to make opportunity attacks on fleeing monsters. And the last piece of advice here about monsters electing not to kill the party, again, consider the enemy's goals. A TPK doesn't have to be literal death. It's fine for you to decide that the party wakes up a few minutes after combat, sitting next to a boiling cauldron of stew. Their hands and feet are bound with rope as the hags have gone out to collect oregano and rosemary from their garden. Now the PCs have to figure out how to free themselves and escape before they become dinner. It's also fine for the party to wake up to find all the enemies slaughtered with a hooded figure standing over them who says, "I saved you, and so now you work for me until this debt is paid." Just don't use that trick more than once per campaign. Fourth on the list is the intriguing idea of trap and hazard rolls. The 4th edition DMG talks in depth about monster rolls, but it also posits that traps can serve specific purposes much in the same way. Those rolls are Blaster, Lurker, Obstacle, and Warder. Blaster traps do area of effect damage. These are the sort of traps one might find outside the dungeon, or in large rooms, or in areas the trap maker wouldn't care about being damaged. You're not going to put a fireball trap in your living room. Lurker traps attack and then disappear to reset, like the giant axe swinging on a pendulum in the hallway. They are designed to be better hidden since they come out of nowhere. Obstacle traps are intended to prevent forward progress, like electrified floor tiles. These traps are good for disabling intruders to give a security team time to arrive. And warder traps are designed to cause commotion or trigger an alarm. When picking a roll for your trap or hazard, it's helpful to think, why is this trap here? What purpose does it serve? Who set this trap, and do they have a secret way to disable it? Using these different tags can help guide your trap design and placement by understanding its function. Finally, let's talk about Improv Aids. For a new dungeon master, the improv aspect can be one of the scariest and hardest parts of the game. But the better prepared you are, the easier it is to improv, which is a sentence that doesn't seem to make sense, but it does, I promise. The book lists 4 specific categories of notes to keep to better help you roll with unexpected events and choices. First up, a list of names. This is well-worn advice, but if you've seen my video on the GM secret weapon, you know there is a trick to keeping a good list of names, and that is brevity. Long lists don't help you, but short lists can be a lifesaver when you need a name in a pinch. Watch that video to understand why. Second thing is a short list of encounters. If you have your players roll for random encounters when they're doing overland travel, you better have one ready to go in case that number comes up on the die. Something level and terrain appropriate. Also, when you're in a bind and have no idea what should happen next, nothing fits the bill better than throwing a combat at your PCs to eat up time in the session so you can delay long enough to help you think. Also, mini dungeons for the players to investigate. It's always handy to keep a map and a few encounters ready to go in case you need to give your PCs a place to explore and you don't have anything substantial planned. Here's an example I keep in my back pocket. If a PC were to die unexpectedly and the party doesn't have immediate access to resurrection magic, they will quickly hear about a holy person in the next town. That person will bring the slain party member back to life at a cost, but not gold. Under the temple or shrine is a crypt that is infested with monsters, and the holy person wants them to go down there and clear out the monsters in exchange for this favor. I have a generic crypt map ready to go, and an idea of the monsters that will be there. I don't have it pre-stocked with specific monsters, because I don't know what level the party will be if this were to happen. But I have a good idea what types of monsters will fit, so it'll be relatively easy to drop balanced encounters in there without a lot of effort. Okay, there we go with 5 more excellent rules to steal from 4th edition D&D to drop into your 5e or Pathfinder game. And if you haven't seen part 1 of this series, what are you even doing with your life? Just kidding. This is GM Jim, and since I have you, how about a like and subscribe below? Come on, you know you want to. Until next time, take care of yourself and have some fun out there.